Hello and welcome, Sheriff here, and today, like promised, we take a look on the relatively new aircraft in War Thunder, the TA-152C. We will take a look what the strength and the weaknesses are of the aircraft and how to deploy the aircraft to get the best possible results. I really like energy fighters and boom and zoom fighters, and the description of the TA-152C as an improvement to the predecessors, the Dora series, got me interested instantly as the aircraft was announced. According to the real-life description of the aircraft, it should be faster on all important altitudes in comparison to a Dora, and therefore should be a really good addition to the German Tier 4 lineup. But sadly, the flight model at the release of the aircraft was a huge letdown. The plane was too slow, suffered from a way too draggy flight model, and was instantly overheating all the time, which decreased the practical performance even more. So I stopped flying the TA-152 completely and switched back to my trusty D-13, which is not very surprisingly a very similar aircraft. However, in the latest major patch, Gaijin reworked the flight models of all Doras and of the TA-152 as well. So I gave it another go, and I have to say I was pleasantly surprised. The aircraft isn't overheating anymore, and the draggy flight model is gone as well. So in the last couple of days I unlocked all the upgrades, and I think I'm now able to judge the abilities of the aircraft correctly. Generally speaking, the TA-152C is faster in comparison to most German fighters and is able to compete against most Allied fighters, especially on medium to high altitudes. But the real strength of the aircraft is a fantastic energy retention in vertical maneuvers. For an experienced Focke-Wulf pilot, this shouldn't come to a huge surprise, but the TA-152C feels even better than the predecessors in terms of energy retention. It's really no problem to get back to the original altitude after power dive or to extend away above maximum speed for quite some time. The 2300 horsepower engine certainly helps here. The TA-152C is armed with two 20mm cannons and one single Mk103 30mm cannon, which is firing through the propeller hub. Sounds like a good punch, right? Well, it depends. With standard belt it was really a pain. Sometimes I wasn't even able to damage the opponent's aircraft from point blank range. It really felt like a lottery sometimes. Once upgraded and loaded with air target ammunition, the result got way better and I could down enemy aircraft reliably by setting them on fire or blow wings off. However, I still have the feeling that since the latest patch, the effectiveness of the German Mk151 20mm is greatly diminished. But on the other hand, I really like the high muzzle velocity of the Mk103. It's relatively easy to lead targets or to fire from greater distance to get that lucky one-shot on fighters, or to kill a bomber from greater distance to avoid the deadly gunners. Keep in mind that the projectiles don't have that much explosive filler in comparison to the shells of the Mk108, which is installed on the Dora 12 for example. The dealt damage of the Mk103 is still good, but comes more from kinetic energy, it seems. If you want, you can use the 103 for ground attacking. The aircraft itself is not particularly good for that role though, but use the ground target ammunition. In that case you can knock out tanks pretty good. Maybe at that point some words on the flight model. The aircraft rolls really well at all speeds and has a good initial response of the elevator. However, the elevator becomes particularly stiff in sustained turns on very high and on very low speeds, which makes aiming and landing interesting, to put it nicely. In a lot of situations, the sensitive initial response of the elevator makes aiming rather difficult, and I was wobbling around right behind the enemy, which is very frustrating. Or alternatively, in low speeds I had a hard time to land the aircraft. Especially if the flaps are in landing position, the aircraft refuses to move at all. Keep that in mind when landing. I personally landed the TA-152C in a very shallow angle and with only takeoff flaps deployed. Don't deploy landing flaps too early. You won't be able to recover from that, really. The acceleration of the aircraft is not bad, but of course it's hard to get the aircraft back to the maximum speed once you lost all of it. The same goes for climb rate. The climb rate is really good, especially in combination with a good energy retention. However, if you lose altitude and speed at a really bad spot, it's really hard to recover from that. So you should pay attention where you want to lose that altitude. One nice thing is that the engine produces a lot of horsepower even on lower throttle settings. The engine is overheating after a while on full power, but on 90% you can cruise on high speed or even effectively climb. I often use that after takeoff to keep the engine longer in combat condition in the sortie. I really don't think I tell you anything special if I say that you shouldn't turn fight with that thing. It screams to you, please fly me at high speeds. Sure, on high speeds the aircraft is able to turn into an enemy temporarily, but in the process you lose speed and therefore the advantage over time. And the turn radius in a sustained turn of the TI-152 is really bad. I even had a lot of trouble to overtake a B-17 and to turn around to attack him from the front. I really had to wait until the bomber is basically one little dot on the horizon to my 6 to be able to turn into him. It's really that bad. Only turn into the enemy if you have the real chance to get him after a few seconds. Now, with that in mind, how to fight with the TI-152C? First, surprise surprise, climb to a decent altitude. Decent is really circumstantial, but I like to stay between 4 and 6,000 meters. From there you can easily drop on enemies, but at the same time, if you see an enemy approaching on the same altitude, you can climb higher to get in altitudes where your engine works even better against some opponents like the Merlin-powered Spitfires. On the other hand, if you encounter a faster opponent like the P-51D30 or a Tempest Mark II, you can dive away with the speed your opponents can't keep without breaking apart. The TI-152 is really sturdy and can easily achieve 850 or 900 kph without breaking apart. But to be honest, enemies on 4 to 6k are really rare in War Thunder for some reason. Most kills I could score were bombers which were trying to attack the objective bases or the airfield. And this is the reason a lot of sorties developed in a bomber hunting mission. And the TI-152C is really good at that game if done correctly. To be effective, I fly above my objective I want to defend and I keep the horizon in sight to spot the bombers early. One tip here, fully zoomed out, the game displays the dots earlier and even with more contrast against the ground. If you do that, you are able to see them from greater distances. After spotting the bomber, I attack in the style I explained on my original channel a while back. A link to that video is first in the description, but second in the card now over the screen, and you can click on that and you can watch that video later if you want to know more about bomber hunting. But in short, I fly towards the bomber and independent of the altitude of the target I attack either from a shallow angle from below or a steep angle from above. In both cases from the front to avoid the nasty gunners and to get some shells into the cockpit or into the engines. If the bomber isn't going down after that, I loop around to get an attack done from the bomber's high 3 to 4 o'clock. But if you want to know more about attacking bombers, I really recommend to watch the linked video. The tactics work really well with the TI-152C because the guns have a really good punch and the plane is fast to catch bombers and is sturdy enough to sustain at least a little bit of 50 cal fire. My preferred tactic against fighters, however, is, if possible, a quick and dirty boom and zoom attack like you see now here in the footage. I come in with altitude and a lot of speed, I throttle back to mask my approach and I blast the fighter out of the sky at point blank range. Sorry Feraphics, that Corsair is it's gone now. No tears please. But to be serious again, this approach has really some good advantages. First, it conserves ammo. Second, aiming is not really necessary as you almost hold the gun barrels against his fuselage. And third, if the enemy doesn't look around and is only reliant on the engine sound, he has no clue what's going on and therefore has no chance for retaliation. With this approach you have to be sure that there isn't any other fighter in the vicinity which is able to intercept you. And as you can see, I'm not free of flaws and I did the mistake not to notice the other enemy before my approach. And if you have an enemy on the 6 like this, it's crucial to identify the enemy correctly. In this situation I did another mistake, I misidentified the Spitfire type. I thought it's a Mark 9, but in fact it was a Griffin powered Spitfire. And I did the mistake to try to outclimb him here on a high speed. But I got too slow and and I decided too late to dive away. He hit my wing, which put me into a spin from where I could not recover, but as you can see, the steep dive encouraged the Spit to follow me, and after he killed me, he ripped his own wings apart. So diving away is a really good option against Spitfires and other British and American fighters. But I could have prevented my own death in the first place by diving down earlier instead of climbing. So it's really important to identify the enemy and to judge your own aircraft abilities correctly. The strength of the aircraft, speed and energy retention shines really if you have a wingman you trust. In this sortie here you see, I was playing the drag and bag game all the time. I was making passes on fighters now and then, and most of the time I was missing. I just had a day where my aiming was off, and I guess everybody of us has such a day from time to time. But luckily I had a wingman flying around here, and I only had to straighten out after my pass and to use that superior speed and the energy retention. Even if the enemy was breaking away after he saw Spareribs, I could turn around and I could then participate in the dogfight again, which used a lot of airspace as we kept our speed up and we turned around in wide vertical turns. In this manner we were able to bring the enemy's energy down pretty quickly, while we were keeping our own energy level throughout the dogfight. But to do that you have to be patient. You have to be aware of the energy state all the time, and you have to be aware of the complete situation. It sometimes feels more like you have to let the enemy fly in front of your guns instead of chasing the enemy actively. Mental strength is required. It really sounds hard, but I had some rounds I felt more like a Zen priest or something like this. Basically, I was flying around and the enemies weren't flying in front of my guns. It was really frustrating. I had 0 kills. I was flying about an hour through the sky, no kills at all. But then suddenly, after refueling in the next sortie, I had 4 or 5 or 6 kills in one sortie. So you have to be really patient until the right situations are developing and that you can fight on your own terms. So you have to be really patient. I can't emphasize this enough. I had a couple of flyouts where I was really tired and exhausted, and this was clearly not a good idea to do a sortie then. Some poor performance really. But so the final verdict on the TA-152C: it's really a better Dora in most regards. You clearly get what you expect if you are an experienced Focke-Wulf pilot. The wobbly aim and the stiff elevator at high speeds make some things a bit difficult, but I really like this plane and I recommend it if you like a boom and zoomish aircraft. The grind is difficult because you need a lot of RP for certain upgrades, but once upgraded it really shines and is really a nice aircraft, I have to say. But that's it for today. I hope you liked it. If you did, hit that like button, and if not, please feel free to press the dislike button, but let me know why. And if you want to see another fighter in a similar video, let me know in the comments. I think next time I will make a video on an American aircraft, but I'm open for ideas, so let me know. See you next time.